And today on the Tacomaholic channel, we will be answering one of the most important questions you will ask yourself if you are shopping around for armor, and that is to go steel or aluminum. Roll the new intro. Now. Okay everyone, so as most of you know, I do have quite a bit of armor on my Tacoma. Currently I do have a rear steel bumper, some steel bolt-on sliders. I am actively shopping around for a front bumper, so that is definitely on the to-do list. And then underneath, I know you can't see, I do have a front IFS skid plate, a transmission skid plate, and right here in front, the always useful lower control arm skid plates. So since I am shopping around for my front bumper, I started asking myself all kinds of questions, and of course, the most important one is whether or not I'm going to go with steel versus aluminum when I make my purchase. And of course, this applies to every kind of armor you can put on your Tacoma for the most part. So today I'll just be going over a few things you're probably going to be asking yourself while you're shopping around, and just other things to consider. First and foremost is rust prevention. As you all know, if you get aluminum, you're going to be good to go and not really have to worry about rust. If you go steel, of course you are going to, get it primed and powder coated, or like bed liner in my case for some of my bumpers. But if you do get that scratched, so the bare metal is exposed, that is something you're going to have to worry about and take care of, because once you get rust, it's sort of like a cancer for your truck. It just starts spreading everywhere. That is certainly one of the first things to consider on whether or not you're going to go aluminum versus steel. Next up on the list is weight consideration. Of course, steel is much heavier than aluminum, and as we all know, our Tacomas do not get the best gas mileage before you start adding all this heavy stuff to your truck. So when you're talking about, going all out with a rear and front bumper, the sliders, whether they're bolt or weld on, and then full armor underneath, you're talking about adding a couple 100 pounds to the weight of the vehicle. Whereas steel is concerned. If you do go aluminum, it seems like, at least from what I've noticed shopping around for front bumpers up here, if you do go aluminum, they are about 60% of the weight of steel. Like a lot of the steel bumpers I've priced and spec'd out, it looks like they're about 100 to 110 pounds, which is certainly not light. And the aluminum version, with all the same specs, so it's the exact same design, just in aluminum, it looks like they're about 60 pounds. So you can see, there's 40 or 50 pounds right there of weight savings for the front. And if you're talking about everything else, you can consider, saving yourself quite a bit, which will of course help your gas mileage out a little. Of course, your gas mileage is still going to take a hit, even just adding aluminum armor, because you are still adding weight to the base vehicle. And the next thing, of course, to consider, and probably the first thing you're going to be considering, is the cost of the material. I'll use the front again since I'm shopping around for that front bumper. It looks like aluminum bumpers are generally between $200 and $300 more expensive. So you can assume, for sliders and rear bumpers and under armor underneath the truck, aluminum is always going to be more expensive than steel. I'm not sure exactly why that is, if just the base material is more expensive, or if it's harder to work with, harder to get, all that stuff. Of course, that's all going to be factored in. So steel is certainly much cheaper. Of course, the steel is heavier, so you have to factor that in for the freight shipping, which is certainly a rude awakening. I've seen, I'm on the East Coast, getting stuff from all the big manufacturers. It seems like they're on the West Coast, and getting that stuff freight shipped out here cross country, it's usually a couple $100. So if you went aluminum, while the material's more expensive, you might recoup that, or at least recoup like maybe half of it in saving on shipping expenses. Okay, and one more thing to consider is how much protection the steel or aluminum is actually going to give you. Of course, both of them, whether you go steel or aluminum, is going to give you certainly more protection than not having the armor on your truck at all. Of course, steel is going to be harder and be a little more durable as far as taking a hit. Of course, you also have to consider, how much, what kind of terrain you're going over, how much are you really going to be needing the sliders. If you're just going to be pre-running in the desert, and you're going to be on sand all the time, you probably don't need sliders and Under Armour and all that stuff, so you can go ahead and save the weight on that. But steel is definitely going to be able to take a better hit, and while I can't attest to this myself, I've seen a lot of people say aluminum is more likely to get hung up on stuff if you're actually sliding over it. So say on my front skid plate, if I hit that on a rock, if I had an aluminum one, a lot of people are saying that it's more likely to get hung up, whereas the steel actually slides off easier. So If you have any experience with that, please comment below. I'd love to know if that's actually true. So far, I'm just basing that on, what I've heard on the forums and elsewhere. Okay, and now that I've given you all those things to consider when you're shopping around for your armor, I'm going to go ahead and give you my recommendations on which metal you should go with for each type of armor. So front and rear bumper, sliders, and all the under armor. Of course, this is just my opinion, so if you disagree, please comment below. I'd like to know why you think one is better than the other. We could have a fun conversation about that. So we are going to start in the rear here with the rear bumper. In my opinion, the rear bumper is probably what you are going to be most likely to hit. Because of your exit angle, you're probably going to bang this around quite a bit. So for the rear bumper, I would certainly recommend steel over aluminum just for the durability. Again, if you get a high clearance aluminum bumper, you're still going to be much better off than running the factory Tacoma bumper off-road. Next up, for the sliders, again, I am going to recommend going with steel for these, because when you do hit these, this is something you definitely want to be able to take whatever you're throwing at it, when you do need them. Aluminum may be fine, but I just think having steel right here, considering it does protect a large amount, it sticks out here and it goes about 1 foot to 1.5 feet underneath your truck, on both sides, giving you a large surface area protection underneath the truck. So if you do end up actually needing the sliders, I would say stick with steel for that. And then underneath here, for any kind of armor piece you're bolting underneath your truck, so LCA skids, front skid plate, trans, gas tank, all of that stuff, again, I would recommend steel over aluminum, because as you can see, these definitely hang much lower than anything else, any other type of armor. So again, you're going to be very likely to actually use these. Ideally, you'd like to get around obstacles, up and on top of a rock, so it's not just sitting there. You're not actually straddling whatever you're going to hit your truck and cause damage on. I have knocked my front skid plate a few times, and it's still a little, scary when you feel that, but having the skid plate under there, I know it can take a hit. It's 1/4 inch thick. That thing's probably bulletproof unless you're using like a 50 cal or something like that. So again, for anything bolting underneath your truck, I would recommend steel again for that. Of course, all of the recommendations I'm giving you, my opinion, all this stuff, it is largely dependent on what type of terrain you're going to be off-roading on. If you go to Moab, Utah every week and do all those crazy rock obstacles, definitely go with the strongest armor you can get. If you're in the desert and know you're never going to, be driving over anything that's going to damage your truck, well, again, you probably don't even need armor, but you could probably go aluminum with that. I'm here in Northern Virginia. There's nothing really crazy, within a few hours driving distance. So most of the armor I have on my truck, it's really an insurance policy where I know it's there. I can have peace of mind. I'm not puckering up every 5 feet when I'm on the trail. So for my last recommendation for the front bumper, and again, I'm actively shopping around, so I'm really debating this myself, and I probably will make another video on a lot of things to consider for front bumper, because that's probably the most in-depth of all the armor. For the front bumper, again, if you're not in a super rocky terrain situation, I might actually go aluminum recommendation on this just for the weight savings, because the front bumper, it's one of the things you can see easily as if something's going to hit or not before it actually hits. If something hits underneath or when you're approaching for the exit angle, it's usually too late by then. It's going to happen and you really don't have time to prepare for it. But for the front bumper, you can see it coming. You're usually going much slower, all that stuff. So when I buy mine, I might actually go aluminum with this. And I know it's a couple $100 more, but that 40 to 50 pounds of weight savings might make a huge deal, because adding that front steel bumper and a winch and all that other stuff, I'll probably have to upgrade the springs up here to 700-pound springs. So while I might still have to do that, since I will be getting a winch and the line for all that, it will be sort of nice getting a little better gas mileage with that weight savings for the front bumper. So I'm about 50-50 on whether or not I'm going to go aluminum or steel for that. I will, of course, let you guys know. All right, everyone, that will do it for this video. Nice, short, and sweet here on Memorial Day weekend. I do hope you have a great Memorial Day weekend. Remember to honor all of those who fell in duty in service of our country. I am also running a Memorial Day sale through midnight on Memorial Day, which is Monday the 28th. So please check that out. I will, of course, link to below. Everything's discounted in there. If this is your first time stopping by, please consider subscribing if you have not already done so. Give the video a like and comment below on what you think of my opinions on all this stuff. Help me grow the channel by sharing the video on your social media. Enjoy your holiday weekend, and I will see you in the next video.